Like many people, I was really disappointed when I found out that Cosmic Skeptic wasn't vegan anymore. Having a well-respected activist with such a large platform come out and say that he started eating animals again, well, that's going to cause more animals to experience the horrors of animal farming and slaughterhouses. I think we often talk about this issue in quite abstract and philosophical ways, but what we're really talking about here is obscene. I mean, we're talking about unbearable suffering, and I think it's important that we don't lose track of that. But I think the Cosmic Skeptic drama can provide an opportunity for reflections that can encourage the animal movement to be more effective. I should qualify this hot take with the acknowledgement that this stuff is really complicated, and the world is messy, and there's lots of uncertainties here. Like, does anyone out there genuinely feel like they know what the fuck they're doing? So in my opinion, Alex O'Connor has been an incredible voice for animals. He's encouraged a lot of people to take this issue seriously. And my perspective is that he doesn't need to be vegan in order to continue doing so. In fact, maybe our movement's heavy focus on getting individuals to go vegan isn't the best strategy anyway. And maybe Alex can inspire many other people who aren't fully vegan to get involved too. Now, to many people, that may sound counterintuitive.
They could help and be vegan, but you give them a free pass.
We're just asking for your personal behavior to change. That's all we're asking for. And that's way more effective.
I don't know how you think things are going to change if you're just going to sit here saying we need to call out institutions or we need to call out capitalism and then be unwilling to change anything in your life yourself.
In this video, I hope to explain my reasoning. Now, when I joined this movement, I was inspired by YouTube activists like Earthling Ed and Joey Carbstrong, and it seemed like everyone had the same strategy. Our mission was to get as many people as possible to go vegan. And that's what I did. At the time, there seemed to be a thriving grassroots community in London, so I was attending activism events every single week. And to an extent, it works. I mean, vegan advocacy is reducing the number of animals being bred, and it's raising awareness of their plight. It's challenging harmful social norms, and helping people see the seriousness of animal suffering. Now, on the other hand, when we look at successful social justice movements of the past, it seems that none of them had such a strong focus on encouraging boycotts. The environmental movement has promoted green consumerism, but the common view among environmental activists is that this has been fairly ineffective, and there seems to have been a shift towards promoting institutional change, with the likes of Extinction Rebellion who are demanding collective action. There was a contingent of the US anti-slavery movement which focused on boycotting slave-made goods. So in some ways this seems kind of analogous to vegans boycotting animal-made products. But after limited success, the free produce movement was abandoned in favour of more political approaches. With our current focus on go vegan messaging, people tend to view being vegan as a prerequisite to being an animal advocate. So, in other words, people feel like they have to make this significant lifestyle in order to get involved. They need to completely change the way they eat, which for many people might be more complicated than for others. I mean, if you look at the rates of obesity in the world, along with the numbers of vegans who fail to maintain their diet, well, you can't help but feel concerned if our main strategy is to convince as many people as possible to change their eating habits. But obviously it's not just about food. People need to change the clothes they buy and the cosmetic products they buy. I want to say that personally, after being vegan for say 2 months, I found this lifestyle really easy to maintain. Like, it honestly feels really convenient for me to be vegan. I don't miss meat at all. I think the vegan meats we have are great, and I think they're only going to get better over time. And likewise, it's only going to get more and more convenient to be vegan over time. But just like Cosmic Skeptic shouldn't generalize from his difficulties with veganism, just because he feels it's impractical for him, that doesn't mean it's going to be impractical for his subscribers. I should also be cautious not to generalize from my ease with veganism. So just because I find it easy, that doesn't mean that everyone else will. Now, the animal movement is a fringe movement, and what we want is for as many people as possible to join the movement and push for change. Now, imagine for a second how much smaller the US anti-slavery movement would have been if their community were limited to people who boycotted all slave-made goods. There were likely many people who disagreed with slavery, but who wouldn't have had the willpower to abstain from all slave-made products. Likewise, surveys suggest that a significant amount of US adults do support the abolition of factory farming and slaughterhouses, despite the fact that almost all of them buy animal products. Now, should we be skeptical of survey results like this because of things like social desirability bias? Absolutely. I think it's unlikely that we would see that much support if there was actually a vote on abolishing factory farming, although there was a vote in Switzerland recently that did show considerable support for a ban. Regardless, there are of course arguments in favour of having a focus on a go vegan call to action. Like if someone commits to going vegan, I think it's more likely that we'll see a significant shift in their worldview, where they see animals as individuals who matter. You know, there's that thing that some vegans call making the connection, which sounds a bit cringe, but I think there's something to it. Like, you become aware of speciesism and really see this as the important issue that it is. An issue that is just not taken seriously at all in the mainstream. You know, like the other historical injustices where the mainstream thought all the activists were crazy and people didn't take them seriously? I'm just saying. And if someone holds the belief that animals are moral patients whose suffering matters like their own does, and yet continues to literally eat them, well, I worry that cognitive dissonance is just going to make it much more likely that they adapt those beliefs in order to reduce the dissonance. And there's actually some empirical evidence to support this. What we have here is a genuine trade-off between two things. If we focus on the boycott, we enforce important social norms and highlight the seriousness of causing animal abuse. But we risk significantly minimizing the number of people who get involved because they find it too hard and then fail to speak up for animals at all because they don't want to feel like hypocrites. My take is that I would be enthusiastic about seeing more non-vegans join the animal movement. I would be happy to see vegan activists be welcoming to non-vegans in joining us to call for the end of the atrocities that are happening in animal farms and slaughterhouses. Would I accept this in a human context? Because wouldn't it just sound ludicrous to be encouraging child abusers to join us in protests calling for the end of child abuse? I think the main difference between these examples is the difference between social norms. Society is entirely set up for people to be non-vegan, and that's where the social pressure pushes towards. In order to avoid causing direct harm to farmed animals, people need to make a significant lifestyle change that puts them in a fringe minority group who are stigmatized by the majority. Now, in the child abuse example, it's going the other way. The social pressure is going the other way. You have to go out of your way to abuse a child, and if you're caught and convicted, you risk completely destroying your life. And that's one reason why I think boycotting slave-made goods in the time when US slavery was legal and normal seems more analogous. And as I said, that's a situation where the focus on encouraging individual boycotts was abandoned in favour of more collective institutional call to actions. Perhaps you think that a non-vegan animal activist is a hypocrite. Well, I agree. They are hypocrites and they should try to be vegan. But it's like having a large movement made up of hypocrites that have a big enough voice to make big change for animals is better than having a movement that fails to enter the mainstream and bring about the change in the world that we want to see. And I think this is something that many environmental activists have realised. I was at an Extinction Rebellion event in London, which, by the way, saw a huge attendance by all different kinds of people. And they were handing out these cards that said things like, you don't need to give up flying to join Extinction Rebellion, or you don't need to be vegan to join Extinction Rebellion, among other things. Now imagine if the environmental movement were only made up of people who were willing to give up flying or remain child-free for the rest of their lives. Well, they would certainly be less hypocritical, but they'd also be less effective. And let's be honest, we're all hypocrites. I mean, we live in a world where people are literally watching their children die from easily preventable diseases, while people on the other side of the world spend their savings on new iPhones and expensive dinners and video games, not to mention the Nickelback CDs. I mean, at least get something worthwhile, like a Humane Hancock Patreon subscription. Ultimately, what I'm saying here is that pushing the narrative that you need to be vegan in order to be an animal advocate is probably harmful to animals over the long term. And having our main focus on a go vegan call to action reinforces that narrative. I mean, yeah, it would be weird to have non-vegans going to protests to tell other people to go vegan. There is, of course, space for vegan advocacy in the animal movement. I mean, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you if it wasn't for vegan advocacy. It's important. What I'm suggesting is a shift in our focus rather than completely abandoning vegan advocacy altogether. If Cosmic Skeptic continues to buy animal products, I think he can potentially be a good example of a non-vegan in the animal movement. As far as I know, his perception of what animals are enduring hasn't changed. He still thinks animal farming is the greatest moral emergency of our time, and he can still have an impact on this emergency. And that's what matters. There are countless animals behind closed doors, hidden away where people can't see them, experiencing something terrible right now. Maybe they can't even comprehend that it will ever end for them. I don't think we should start from the question, how do we convince as many people as possible to go vegan? I think we should start from questions like, how do we help them as effectively as possible? Or how do we bring about the end of animal farming as quickly as possible? And it seems to me that if we're serious about this, if we really want to see animal liberation, we're going to need as many people as we can get. I would love to see Alex continuing to be an amazing animal advocate, and I hope he can inspire more people to join us, including people who aren't yet fully vegan. And I also hope that in hearing me say that, you don't think I'm trying to tone down the moral seriousness of Alex's decision to eat animals. If Cosmic Skeptic were to ever have his actions accounted for in some hypothetical afterlife, then eating animals would rightly be seen as a serious moral misdeed. But the good he has done, and the good he will hopefully do in the future, would be seen as a serious moral achievement. Both these things can be true. Some people do act in ways that are morally better or worse than others, but I think it's the case that all of us have both serious moral flaws and serious moral strengths. We should try to improve as much as we can, because for many beings on Earth right now, life feels like a horror show. If you were them, ending this misery would feel like the most important thing in the world. An important part of trying to fix this is for us to become a more morally responsible species, and that's a hell of a task. Getting that to happen, it starts with each and every one of us.
What is the moral principle underlying our approach to the equality between human beings? Right? We think about equal rights and human rights, and we apply them consistently across human beings. And the reason that we have a conception of human rights is because we recognize that somebody's moral value should not be dependent on morally irrelevant concepts like race and gender and sexuality and religion. Animal exploitation has to end now as a matter of principle, just as racism does, just as sexism does, just as ableism does, too.
Sending a huge thank you to the unsung heroes that are my Patreon supporters who are making this possible. Like, it's kind of surreal that I get to spend my career working on what I feel is most important. I'm just so incredibly grateful that you guys are trusting me with this opportunity. You're the reason why I'm here making these videos. You're the reason why I'm working on a bigger project outside of YouTube. So thank you. And if you're not currently a Patreon supporter, but you do enjoy my content and find it valuable, please do consider supporting me, because it is really making a difference. With that said, thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. Not many people make it to the end of YouTube videos, so you are a special person. There you go. There's some external validation for you. I will see you very soon with another video. This is Tofu. You okay? You want a treat? Yummy. Yummy. Okay, off you go. Off you go.